In the late 40s and early 50s, this is one of these what is it sort of things. So you got to tune in, and I wish you would call out as soon as you realize what this is all about. There's going to be one word. You look for the word that goes with what I'm introducing to you. In the late 40s and early 50s, a woman named Gina Govan, who was an informal spiritual teacher, got together a group of people. Among those people were Peter Caddy and Eileen Caddy. And they met for several years, and their theme and what they were really committed to was the idea of the Christ within. I found that interesting. I didn't know that about them. Well, Peter and Eileen were appointed to manage a hotel, the Cluny Hill Hotel in northern Scotland. And they did so very successfully in, I think, beginning in 1957, and in 1962, some change in upper management got them the loss of their jobs. And so they were let go at that time. Here they are in northern Scotland, near the coast, and what to do? Well, they ended up living in a caravan, what we would probably call an RV, on the coast of Scotland near a small town. When they were there, they kind of kept on with that small community that they had, but they knew that they had to be sustainable, and so they began to grow vegetables. Problem? That soil in the coastal area of northern Scotland was pretty much all sand without much nutrients in it. So they were, anybody got this yet? Okay, we'll keep going. So they enriched that soil, mostly with horse manure. And that soil eventually, as they worked with it and prepared the soil, eventually produced the largest vegetables that anybody around had seen. Ram, you know. Don't you know? I'm going to tell you. Findhorn. Anybody remember that word?
Yes.
Yeah, Findhorn.
Findhorn.
He said fine horn.
Findhorn.
Findhorn? Findhorn or Findhorn? I'm not sure which it is. Anyway, what did they do? They amended the soil. And they became a foundation which exists to this day, and is world-renowned. International conferences have been there, kind of a pace setter for the movement of organic farming. And we carry that tradition on in slightly different ways here in Arizona, which doesn't have sandy soil, but it's got soil that needs amendment nonetheless. So that brings us to the title for today's message. What kind of dirt are you spreading around? Well, you may need to alter that dirt just a little bit, and that's what we'd like to talk about today. One of the things that are going to come to play here is a parable from Christian scriptures called the parable of the sower. Sower went out to sow seed. He sowed some on rocky ground. He sowed some in a place where the weeds grow up and choke the plant, and sowed some on good ground. And of course, you know what happened with each of those things. But it points to the need for amending the soil. And today we're going to use that as a metaphor for our consciousness. Our consciousness, the soil of our consciousness, with amendment is going to allow growth. And that's what we're talking about in this month of March. The soil of consciousness, well, what kind of soil are we endorsing, first of all? I kind of put it into two categories. Ego consciousness, totally self-absorbed, totally looking at pumping itself up, not looking within, but looking to its own devices. And then divine consciousness, which we sometimes call Christ consciousness. That's within us. That's what aligns with our very creation, that is a part of our heritage that we have as being both human, which we are, and divine as well. And we speak about that often. I liked a little quote that I had seen from Rumi, so I want to share that with you that really verifies this. And he says, although you appear in earthly form, your essence is pure consciousness. You are the fearless guardian of divine light. That's why I really love that opening song that we had today, because it ties in with that divine light. So I put together a key spiritual truth, as I often do, and I'm going to give it to you for today. Preparing ourselves to grow, we eliminate what keeps us from flourishing, and we enhance our growth with divine additions. If you're going to buy a property and you want to have a garden on that property, you probably ought to look at it first to find out what kind of soil you're choosing, what kind of plot you're going to buy, what is going to help you grow the things that you want to grow. So it could be that you could run into a very rocky place, not likely to get real good growth real quick. Could be there's all sorts of weeds and you're going to have too much work to do because they're going to overrun what you want to plant. And so you're going to choose between something that's infertile and that's well-nourished and fertile, like black, rich dirt. We can use the metaphor that ego consciousness sometimes chooses that rocky place, that place with a lot of weeds. Whereas divine consciousness chooses the rich soil and the ability to enrich it so that we rise to what we want to be. Two things. We have to find out what we're taking out before we spread that dirt around. Find out what we're taking out of the dirt, because no matter how good that plot is, you're not likely to get perfect soil. There might be some things you'd have to take out of that dirt. And I need your help here. If you've got a garden, a would-be garden, and you're going to take some things out, you're going to eliminate some things in that garden. We discussed this yesterday on Saturday Soul Boost, but I want to see what you have to say. What are you going to eliminate from that soil? Feel free, just speak right out.
Tin cans.
Tin cans, debris. I bet you could tell us stories, Ram, about what you found in your gardens. And tin cans may be one of them. What else are we going to eliminate? The obvious.
Weeds.
Weeds. You got it. What else?
Rock.
Rock, stones. You're on it. Anything else?
Chemicals.
What is it?
Chemicals.
Chemicals. Ooh. Now, those are hard things to get rid of. We have to sometimes displace things in order to replace them. So we'll get there. I put one more when I was thinking about it. Grubs. You know what grubs are? They're really gooey, yucky little white worms. Well, if you plant something, they're likely to eat them from the bottom side up, and your plant won't flourish. The point being, there are many things to eliminate in our garden soil. But now let's use the metaphor and turn it to the soil of consciousness. I'm just going to give you a couple of things that come to me, and you will think of many more, and hang on to them because we've got an exercise at the end here which will help you to bring those out. The soil of your consciousness might be error thinking. We're so involved in mental things that sometimes we don't listen to our heart to know what our heart resonates with. We know the truth. We have access to the truth, but that ego consciousness keeps us pecking away at a mental puzzle of one sort or another, or a great idea that we have without checking in with that core of our being, that Christ within. And so we end up with error thinking. We have wrong premises, and we think erroneously. I'm one of those things. Then we also have kind of like error thinking. We have embedded philosophies or theologies or conventional wisdom that's been with us ever since we started being trained as a child. The ones that I can think of are things related to prosperity, things related to health. I don't know if anybody grew up with the idea money doesn't grow on trees. And that has embedded itself in our thinking, in our minds. Or we might say, life is tough, then you get sick, and then you die. Ever heard something like that? And those things reside in us unless we eliminate them. So those are what we might want to eliminate from consciousness. Other things, detrimental habits. We're such people of pattern. I'm a person, well, let me disclaim it myself. I'm a person that likes patterns. I like things that I do regularly. My wife always tries to get me to eat something different for breakfast, but I have my breakfast, and that's a pattern in my life. I don't think that's particularly problematic, but there are patterns in my life, which in the past, and maybe even a few yet right now.
You have changed. It used to be 3 fried eggs. Now it's 2 poached eggs.
See, I'm amending my consciousness. Donna said it used to be 3 fried eggs, and now it's 2 poached eggs, so I'm working on it. Detrimental habits. When we're able to eliminate them, habits that don't serve us. One that I'm a little prone to from time to time is watching my iPad too much. I can get caught up in a movie or a news program or even Facebook. I try not to do that. And it's a habit that doesn't get me where I want to go. It is a habit that doesn't allow me to grow. It stunts my growth. And then there are judgments. What about if we could let go, eliminate the judgments that we have? What about resentments? If we were able to forgive those resentments that we've held as burdens for forever, would free us to grow. That's what we take out of the dirt and out of our consciousness in order that we may foster growth. So going back to that key spiritual truth in part, preparing ourselves to grow, we eliminate what keeps us from flourishing. And then what do we add the dirt? Add to the dirt. If we're going to spread the dirt around, we might as well have something that's added to it. Well, in our garden, we're likely to put in compost. I say this because I'm learning about this. I have the pleasure of going to Shanti Olmsted Brahm's farm and working on a weekly basis. I go down every Wednesday. And I learned that compost is important. In fact, it becomes the soil. As we work with that compost, you've got more soil that's really composty soil than you do soil that's native to the farm, I think. And you fill up those planter boxes with that amended soil. So there's also manure, kind of stinky stuff, but it's something that works back into the circle of life and enriches that which we grow. Yes, I have to tell you, well, I wish I'd brought the slide of this. There's a little cartoon. I always share cartoons at Saturday's Home Boost. And then let me see if I can get it right or remember it. Here's 2 cows in the field. He said, we make pies and they feed the grass. The grass makes something and that feeds people. Anyway, it's a circular kind of thing. The idea, I didn't remember it very well. I like the pies part. That which doesn't seem to be useful in some cases is just what we need to enrich the soil so that we can grow. Peat moss, mulch, vermiculite. I'm learning from Ram what vermiculite is. It maintains the moisture in the soil. And of course, water. All of these are additives, and there could be many more. Ram, I'm not going to ask you to give a list more. Charcoal. I know we make charcoal down there, and that's added to the soil. Now let's move over to the other side of the metaphor, the consciousness, the soil of consciousness. So what are we adding there? Well, there are words that go together, and I just put three of them together today because they're kind of in the same area. One is quiet, two is contemplation, and three is meditation. Meditation sometimes seems hard, at least to get a good practice going. But these are things, when we add that to the soil of our consciousness, we enrich it so that it expands, it grows. It's a great medium for growth. So this is something that I continue to learn. I've meditated a bit for years. I've written meditations. I've given guided meditations, as we do every Sunday here. But it wasn't until within the last year when I really was able to give myself to meditation. Now it's part of that practice, part of that positive habit. Every morning when I get up, and I'm an early riser, so maybe 5 o'clock, that's the very first thing that I do. I sit in the quiet, and it feeds my soul. It's a richness that I want to be part of that consciousness. I recommend it highly. However long you do it, doesn't matter what method you have, whatever suits you. Spend that time in quiet. The other morning, in that quiet, sometimes I get an inspiration there. Sometimes stuff comes up from within me. 2 or 3 days ago, I don't know when it was, I was in my morning meditation, and 3 things that were very important for me came up out of that meditation, that time of quiet. And they provided that nourishment that my consciousness needed for that day. Happened to be 3 P's. I talked about pause, pace, and presence. And those 3 things came up like they were a trio of things that were what I needed for that moment in time. If you don't have a meditation practice, get started at it and don't quit. If it's nothing more than sit down and shut up, do that. Get started, because it will feed your soul. It will let you grow. Forgiveness, that's the other side of what we talked about, those resentments that we have to eliminate. Wow. You'll be much freer. You won't be impeded from really experiencing that which you desire if you can let go of some of those resentments, if you can forgive, and sometimes that means forgiving yourself. What about intentional compassion? You have the intention to be loving. That was our theme last month, the theme of love. And I don't just mean in the traditional ways, but that deep sense of the divine within that wants to come through us into the world. Quiet, as I mentioned. What about time in nature? What a nourishing thing that is. Just to spend time. No other agenda. And then Marianne, I'm sure you're going to like this one. What about music? When I go down to Rum's on Wednesday morning, I usually get there about 7 o'clock. When I walk into Rum's house, he's got music somewhat similar to what we had for our opening song today. I don't know if you were in for the opening song, but it's very spirit-filled, I guess is what I would say, that music. And that's part of your spiritual practice. But music of whatever kind that inspires you, that moves you up, that expands you, that lets you grow. Spend time with. And there are many more, and we're going to give you a chance to put those things down as well. That key spiritual truth, when we look about what we're adding, preparing ourselves to grow, we enhance our growth with divine additions. Now, Rick, will you? I gave you some handouts to pass out. Would you pass one of those out to everybody? We're down to the point of how do I do that? And we're getting to it. Remember we talked about consciousness? Well, it's such a hard term sometimes to get a handle on it. So I'm trying to make it simple for you today, and it's on the handout. For those of you who are joining us online, listen closely and get a piece of paper and a pencil, or it could be a pen or lipstick, whatever you can to write with. Because I want to suggest a way to do this, an exercise that we can do together. That consciousness is a composite of all that we are. Consciousness is, first of all, knowledge. Consciousness is ideas. Consciousness is thought. Consciousness is emotion. Consciousness is even sensation. Now, if you take the first letter of all of those things, it talks about growing or rising up in consciousness, and the acronym is KITES, K-I-T-E-S. That's all of you. Everything from sensation and emotion through thought, ideas, and knowledge. That's your consciousness. And that's what we're developing. We're amending all of those things. We're also amending the consciousness of unity of Payson. This month of growth is it's very intentional. It's my belief, and you'll hear a lot of this in this coming month, that we're destined to expand, to grow. We got some work to do that. We have a pattern of thinking of ourselves perhaps as a small community. What about if we're an expansive community? What about if we could change that mental attitude? We think of ourselves as limited in money, limited in technical expertise. What about if we could think of ourselves as having unlimited potential? What if we could amend our consciousness as a community to do that? And Donna's helping me out by writing on the board. For those of you who are online, we don't get you to see it, but I'll read it back to you. Now, in that handout that I gave you, and now I'm explaining this for those of you who are online, there's a list of 5 blank lines. What am I eliminating from consciousness? And you know what's important for you. What am I letting go of that I eliminate from consciousness so that I can grow? Or it could be, what are we eliminating? It could relate to unity of Payson in this community. I leave that up to you. So you can write down what's coming to your mind immediately now, and you can take it home and you can fill out those 5 things, and maybe you'll end up having 15. But that's what you're going to let go of. so that you can amend your consciousness and allow for growth. And then what am I adding to my consciousness? The other question is there, or what are we adding to our consciousness as unique patient? Don was marking on the board here. Debbie and Donna and I are working on making this board into a vision board for Unity of Payson. Right now there's, well, what Donna wrote.
Want to read it?
Yeah.
It's on here now.
Oh, okay.
just
So
wrote
what's on? I don't have one of those. I made it early this morning, but I don't have one of those. Yeah, go ahead.
We are a vibrant, growing spiritual community with immense possibility.
Okay. So this is the beginning of our vision board. I'm going to be asking those of you who maybe could come 2 minutes early to bring something. An image is good. Debbie and Donna and I are going to work on some things, but we want this to be a part of our whole community. Things that we see with eyes of faith and that we want to put there so that we can be reminded of that. And those things are going to stem from the work you do in saying, I'm eliminating this, or I'm adding this in my soil of consciousness. More in the weeks to come. But let me go back to, I think I'm not prepared either. I've got something in my book bag over here I need. I don't do this very often. Well, I'm going to say it where everybody can hear. I don't do this very often, but I want to read. Remember we talked about the parable of the sower from the Christian scriptures? I want to just read that. It's powerful. And it illustrates what we're trying to say today. From Matthew, the 13th chapter. As for what was sown on rocky ground, you remember the rocky ground we talked about. This is one who hears the word and immediately perceives it with joy, yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. And when trouble or persecution or circumstances, I added that, arise on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, remember thorns choking off the plant that we want, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. And now we get to the part that we're aiming for. But as for what was sown on good, and I might say amended soil, soil that's been built up, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, and who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, another 30. That's where we're heading. Altering, amending, changing, building our consciousness so that we can grow. Remember, Findhorn took a lot of work amending the consciousness of that sandy, barren soil. But what did it produce? An amazing, amazing growth that turned into a harvest that was plentiful. Once more on that key spiritual truth. Preparing ourselves to grow, we eliminate what keeps us from flourishing, and we enhance our growth with divine additions, and so it is.